Hello, and welcome to Alton's Story, where tabletop tales come to life. I'm your host, Frederick Smith, author of and narrator for The Acquired Taste for Adventure, a D&D audiobook series based upon actual Dungeons & Dragons games. And with that, let's get started. Alton's Story, The Acquired Taste for Adventure, Chapter 2. Dawn arrived, bringing a thin veil of mist that hovered above the adventurers' campsite. The group, now a band of 5, had decided to split the night into 3-hour watches to divide the responsibility of guard duty. This had proven unnecessary, though, as they spent a restful night sleeping, free from any unsavory encroachments. As the rising yellow sun began to warm them, they collected their belongings and gave water to the ox before finding her a suitable hiding place. With more combat being likely, the ox cart would be an unwieldy problem that they could avoid by simply not bringing it along. After securing it and the beast of burden in a small, grassy glen, they headed back to the goblin prince that Idriana had found the previous evening. Her tracking skills, honed by years spent in the Underdark as a cave warden, did not fail her, and the half-drow ranger pointed the group away from the road and into the misty Neverwinter Wood. She led them along for some distance, occasionally slowing to discern animal track from monster, sometimes stooping under or stepping over fallen branches that blocked the path. After several miles trudging through deep wood, Idriana noted to Erevan, her high elf translator, that the monster's route had intersected with a well-established game trail, and these two paths had become one. This would make it easy for the entire group to follow the goblins without Idriana's further guidance, as the path they now followed was also littered with numerous fragments of light gray stone, making the drops of blood stand out quite plain to see. They continued on, through the middle of a wooded valley, upward to the spot where the two hills that comprised it became one. As the path became easier to follow, the group traveled faster and made more noise, not only from the rattle and clank of their gear, but also as they became more chatty about their bold plans to save their gnomish employer and friend, Dornan Halfjack. After a distance, Alton started to frown at the noisy crew, deciding it would be better for him to scout ahead and provide the group with some reconnaissance. Remembering the experience the night before, the halfling wanted to make sure they weren't bumbling into another goblin ambush, so he crept ahead of the group, his footsteps softer than the whisper of a ghost. He hopped oversized tree roots while silently scampering from rock to rock, barely allowing the pads of his hairy feet to touch the ground. Alton, the thief, was an exceptionally agile creature. He had needed to develop this skill, having begun his life of crime as a hungry orphan child. His habit as a youngster had been to loiter in the markets, waiting for an approaching wagon or perhaps a cluster of foot traffic, best with some burly-looking fighters among them. Then he would grab and run off with a chosen item, dashing in between the wheels in motion or right through a small gap in the throng of toughs, daring the proprietor to chase after him and entice disaster. Most of his victims, the numerous food vendors and storekeeps in the city of Luskan, just yelled and shook their fist at his back while he tore off down the street, hungrily munching some delicacy whose deliciousness was only amplified by its method of acquisition. There were many delectable memories from those days. His mouth began to water as he reminisced on his favorites: smoked capon, seasoned link sausages, spicy legs of mutton, and the tender ribs of slowly barbecued elk meat. Oh, how delectably greasy his shirt had become, stuffing in hot items and then lighting out down the street. His stomach began growling at the thought of stolen shepherd's pies, cherry pastries, fragrant cheeses, and, oh heavens, cheesecake. How many days had it been since he had tasted anything even remotely? Without warning, Alton heard a snapping sound, and he felt a loop of rope quickly pull tight around his ankles. He was suddenly yanked off his feet, into the air, and left hanging upside down from a long, thin pine tree that bowed under his weight. The supposed trap expert had been caught in a spring snare, likely set by hunters to catch dumb beasts ambling along the game trail, and it had left him dangling there like a prized hare. He turned to look back up the trail, hoping that the rest of the group was far enough behind to have not seen his predicament. But, alas, the dwarf Malik brought his powerful hand up to cover his eyes with an open palm, and the half-drow, Idriana, covered her mouth to stifle her giggling. Alton, the entrapped halfling closed his eyes and muttered some unmentionable words to himself. The city boy hadn't even considered looking for traps here, and he had paid an embarrassing price for his carelessness. Trying to regain some semblance of pride, Alton carefully planned his next move. Using the existing momentum of the rope swinging, he undulated his body back and forth a few times, increasing the rope's speed until, when the pendulum's trajectory and speed were satisfactory to him, he used his dagger to slice himself free, somersaulting in the air before landing with his arms outstretched like a circus performer. He winked back at his companions, placing his knife into his grinning teeth, and brushed off his shoulders with an actor's flourish. Jazzberry, the tiefling performer and his best friend, smiled, approving of his flair for the dramatic. Alton clearly enjoyed the limelight too, but only if it made him look good. Their route was now running parallel to a small stream that flowed along their right side, with both of them originating from the junction point of the two hills that form the valley. The group slowly moved along the path, Alton creeping a short distance ahead of them, searching for traps and looking for monsters, then giving the all-clear signal by flashing a small hand mirror. They did this several more times, once with Alton locating another hunter's snare, this time with his eyes instead of with his feet, and he also guided the group around an old-fashioned punji pit, designed to make the victim fall onto sharpened stakes and animal horns. The sheer size and deadliness of this last trap suggested to Alton that it was probably not intended for animals. This was intended to keep the prying eyes of creatures, probably humanoid, away from something farther ahead. Pardon the interruption, but if you're enjoying my work, please like, subscribe, and leave me a comment down below. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to receive notifications whenever I upload a new video. The path was becoming clearer of trees as it got closer to the stream's origin, and as they turned a bend, they could see, through a gap in the tree cover above, a jagged-mouthed cave entrance set into a rocky hillside about a mile away. The stream of water fell from an opening on the left side of the cave's entrance, cascading down to the stream bed below and then flowing toward them. Their path turned right, crossing directly through the stream at a shallow point about a giant's throw further ahead, and then it again turned, this time sharply left, proceeding up a steep climb parallel to the right side of the waterfall. Though the immediate area around the cave itself was largely clear of vegetation, being too rocky and steep for roots to find soil, the path up to the entrance had several large clumps of evergreen trees, which would be ideal hiding spots for sentries. The low, shallow point in the stream was obviously the fording point for animal and monster alike, as numerous prints could be seen in the soft, wet mud on both sides of the bank. But the adventurers stopped short of crossing, trying to decide what course of action to take before sloshing on blindly through the frigid water. It was high noon now, with significantly less cover here, and from the high vantage point on the slope, any potential monsters could easily see their approach. If they were spotted, the goblins could raise some sort of alarm and summon whatever lurked in the cave. Erevan, the high elf noble, seemed to know the perfect solution, though. Luna can fly, and see what threats might be perched above. That way we'll know if we even have to bother being quiet. He whispered in Elvish to the snow-colored owl on his shoulder, who hopped off the leather patch that protected his fine silk cloak. The elf's familiar, a magical companion with whom he shared his consciousness, caught herself mid-drop with a few silent flaps of her wings, quietly rising up and away from the group. Erevan, his eyes now closed to watch his pet's progress from their shared view high above the ground, narrated as the bird progressed along. I circle above the first cluster of trees. Nothing there but a tasty mouse, he smiled. Not in the second stand. The slope seems clear of monsters. Wait, no. There are 2 goblins in the last thicket. They're shooting at me! The adventurers could see the owl in the distance, and the bird suddenly angled her posture to the right, and then executed an aerobatic dive to dodge out of the way of a goblin arrow. Erevan's familiar continued her swoop straight downward, using gravity to increase her speed, then inverted herself by rolling over mid-drop and pulled back level with the ground, having completely reversed course to fly back to the group. The goblins, bored and hungry, had revealed their location to them. But better still, the green monsters were none the wiser to the adventurers' presence. The party now had a decision to make. Who was going to sneak across the stream to deal with the two goblin archers? Alton, the sneaky halfling thief, was one of the obvious choices, but for safety's sake, there would need to be two of them for this to work. Whom would they send to accompany him? Erevan's suggestion was to take the half-drow ranger. Perhaps Idriana should go with you, Alton. I've seen how quiet she is, and you can trust her skill with the bow. The blonde elf smiled reassuringly. I'm not sure I want her near me, was Alton's first thought. Being a stranger was bad enough, but half-drow on top of it? He needed to know he could trust his partner, and though he might not want to say this part out loud, he didn't trust her at all. Alton thought fast. We might need to communicate if things go sideways over there, and I don't speak any Elvish, I'm afraid. Alton felt confident this would disqualify her from the task at hand. Malik, the dwarf barbarian, tugged at his red braids of beard. It's just 2 wee goblins, the dwarf said in his thick brogue. Alton and I can take them out, or I'm a bearded gnome. The adventurers exchanged concerned glances. The potential combat wasn't really the issue, of course. They were afraid of the dwarf splashing through the chilly water, how the noise he might make could give them all away before they even got across to the monsters. What were they to do? And that is where we are going to leave it for today, but rest assured we will pick up from where our story left off in next week's episode. Thank you so much for staying all the way till the end of the video, and if you enjoyed my work, please consider donating to my Patreon, which you can find linked in the description. I appreciate all of you, and until next time, please be kind to yourselves and to each other.